The teller didn't say it loud. She leaned forward, dropped her voice just a little, looked at me over the top of her reading glasses, and said, "Honey, your husband never told you, did he? And girl, I need you to understand where I was in that moment." I was sitting in a plastic bank chair in my work scrubs. I had a half-eaten granola bar in my jacket pocket. I had come straight from my job on my lunch break to do what I thought was a boring Tuesday errand, get my name added to our joint checking account. That's it. That was the whole plan. I handed her my marriage certificate, my ID, my social security number, normal stuff, boring stuff. And she pulled up the screen and went, quiet. Then she turned the monitor toward me. And I sat there and forgot how to breathe. This is that story. And I promise you, by the time we're done here, you're going to understand exactly how a woman can be with a man for over a year, marry him, move in with him, split the cost of firewood on a camping trip with him, and have absolutely no idea who he actually was. Not because I wasn't paying attention, because I was looking for all the wrong signs. Let me tell you who I was before all of this happened. My name is Ashley, 32 years old when this went down. Dental hygienist at a practice in Katy, Texas, that's a suburb outside Houston. I had a studio apartment I was low-key proud of, a Kia I'd paid off myself, and absolutely zero interest in playing games with men anymore. Because here's what nobody tells you about your early 30s as a woman. You get tired. Not sad tired, not bitter tired, just done tired. Done with men who text wide at midnight and think that counts as putting in effort. Done with guys who call themselves ambitious on their dating profile and then ask to split the appetizer. Done with first dates that feel like awkward job interviews where nobody gets hired. I had been through a 4-year relationship in my late 20s that ended when my ex decided at 29 years old that he needed to, and I quote, find himself. He found himself in Phoenix with a yoga instructor. Good for him. I truly mean that. I'm not bitter. Okay, I was bitter for maybe 6 months, but by the time I met Caleb, I had genuinely arrived at a place where I was fine on my own. I had just bought really nice curtains for my apartment and felt like a whole entire adult about it. That peace I had, I need you to hold on to that detail. Because everything that comes after only makes sense when you know I wasn't looking for someone to save me. I met Caleb Parker at my cousin Dina's church picnic. Fall. October-ish. One of those perfect Texas days where it's finally under 80 degrees and everyone acts like we've been rescued. Not my church, Dina's church. I want to be clear about that, because Dina had been asking me to come to a church event for 3 solid years, and I finally said yes. And now this happened. So the jury is genuinely still out on whether that was a good decision. Caleb was standing near the food table, holding a paper plate and staring at the potato salad like it had personally offended him. I laughed. I don't even know why. It just hit me funny, and he looked up and said, "There is clearly too much mustard in that." I said, "Are you a potato salad expert?" He said, "No, ma'am. Just a man who's eaten a lot of bad potato salad." He was tall. He had this stillness about him like nothing was ever a crisis. He was wearing jeans that had actual dirt on them, not mall-bought pre-distressed jeans. Real dirt. His truck in the parking lot was an old Ford F-150 that had clearly lived a full life. He said he worked in land and agriculture. I pictured, I don't know, a farm manager? Surveyor? Someone who rode around on a tractor and checked fences? He asked if I wanted to take a walk instead of standing there debating potato salad. I said sure. We talked for 2 hours. And he was just easy. He listened, like he was actually curious about what I was saying. He didn't check his phone once. He asked what I actually liked doing on weekends, not what I said I liked to seem interesting. What I actually liked. He called me 3 days later. Not texted, called. Like an actual human person from a functional era of dating. By our 4th date, I remember thinking, this is what calm feels like. Nothing flashy, nothing trying too hard, nothing that looks like trouble. I thought that was the whole story. Spoiler, it was absolutely not the whole story. For the next 14 months, Caleb was exactly who he appeared to be. Same beat-up truck, same rotation of flannels and worn-out boots. When we went out to eat, he picked places that were good, not places that were designed to impress. One of our best dates was a Thursday night at a taco truck by the highway, eating out of paper baskets on the tailgate of that old F-150. He wasn't cheap. He always paid, and he was generous in the ways that actually matter. He showed up when I had the flu with flowers, soup, and zero expectation of anything in return. He remembered small things without being asked. He fixed my shower curtain rod the first time he came over and never mentioned it again. But he lived in a house that was just fine. 3 bedrooms, older neighborhood, nothing fancy. His furniture looked like it had come from 3 different decades, and nobody had coordinated any of it. I once reorganized his kitchen cabinets while he was on the phone because it was stressing me out, and he thanked me like I'd done something extraordinary. My friend Justine asked what he did for work. I said, land management. She said, does that mean he has money or no money? I said, I think he's comfortable, like normal comfortable. I never asked directly about money. That felt rude. We were dating. I wasn't there to audit him. I was there to figure out if I liked him as a person. About a year in, he proposed. We were on a camping trip he'd actually planned, like really planned. Campsite booked, food packed, firewood ready, the whole thing. He got down on one knee by a creek out in the hill country. The ring was simple, beautiful, not flashy. Of course I said yes. Before the wedding, he mentioned a prenuptial agreement. His family had property land holdings, and they wanted to protect those assets. Completely fair. I had my own lawyer look at it. My lawyer said, his family has significant agricultural and mineral interests. These would remain his separate property. Significant. She didn't put a number on it. I didn't ask for one. I probably should have asked for one. We got married on a Saturday in November. 70 people, a venue outside Houston with string lights and big old oak trees. His mom Linda wore a pale blue dress. His older brother Derek gave a toast that was warm but had this particular edge to it I couldn't quite name at the time. After the honeymoon, Caleb said, we should get you set up on the household account. He handed me a debit card with my name on it. For everything, he said. I said I'd go by the bank on my lunch break and get it sorted officially. Normal errand. 20 minutes. Max. I walked into our bank branch in my scrubs. Granola bar in my pocket. Completely unprepared for my life to change. The teller, a woman maybe in her early 50s, reading glasses on a beaded chain, pulled up the account. She looked at the screen. Looked at me. Looked back at the screen. She said, and you're Ashley Parker, married to Caleb James Parker? Yes, ma'am. She got very quiet, typed something. And then she said, and this is the sentence that short-circuited my entire brain. Honey, your husband never told you, did he? I said, told me what? She turned the screen toward me. Now I want you to think about a number. Think about what you would personally consider to be a lot of money, like more than you've ever seen in one place at one time. Now multiply it. I'm sitting in a plastic chair, scrubs, half a granola bar, and I am looking at a number that I have to count the digits of twice because I don't trust the first count. The teller just waited. God bless her. She just waited. Finally, I said, Is this the right account? She said, yes, ma'am. Your name was added this morning. I did not cry. I did not scream. I did not faint dramatically. I thanked her, walked to my car, sat down, and called my husband. Hey, babe, he said. And I said very calmly, very slowly, Caleb, what exactly does land and agriculture mean to you? Where are you right now? I'm at the bank, Caleb. Another pause. Longer. Don't drive. I'm coming. He pulled up in that rusted-out F-150 25 minutes later. The most surreal thing I have ever witnessed is watching a man who is apparently worth more money than I can comfortably process step out of a truck with a cracked windshield and walk across a bank parking lot like he is just a regular person. He got in the passenger seat. I didn't say hello. I said, "Start talking." Here's what I'll give Caleb. He didn't get defensive. He didn't spin it. He looked at his hands for a second, and then he talked. His grandfather had bought land in West Texas in the 1960s. A lot of land. His father had added more in Oklahoma. That land sat on oil and gas leases that had been producing income for decades. Cattle operations, mineral rights, LLC structures, trust accounts. The number I'd seen at the bank, that was just the liquid portion. The actual total value of everything was more. I sat there and thought about every time I had offered to split a dinner check and he had let me. I thought about the camping trip where I bought the firewood because I wanted to contribute. I thought about the Yeti tumbler I gave him for Christmas because I thought it was a really nice gift, and he told me it was his favorite thing he'd gotten in years. I said, "Caleb, I bought you a Yeti tumbler." He said, "It really is a great tumbler." That is not the point. He knew. He looked ashamed. He said, "I know." Then, slowly, the real reason came out. He'd been married before. His ex-wife had known about the money from day one, and when a land deal went temporarily sideways and the accounts looked thin for about 18 months, she left. Didn't fight for it, didn't try to figure it out together, just packed up and left. And after that, Caleb had made a quiet decision. He'd live simply. He'd drive the old truck, keep the regular house, see who stuck around. He said, "I wasn't testing you." I looked at him. "It really feels like you were testing me." I was protecting myself. And that I understood. I didn't like it, but I understood it. That still didn't make it okay. Here is what made it significantly worse. His family knew. His mother, Linda, who had always been pleasant but sort of watchful with me, knew. His brother Derek, who had given me a very specific kind of look at the wedding that I now understood, knew. And they had all watched me for 14 months. They'd watched me choose taco trucks and compliment the modest house and buy my own half of the camping firewood, and they had been without my knowledge evaluating me. I found this out when Caleb mentioned his mother had asked him once, before the engagement, whether he was sure I wasn't starting to figure it out. I had to literally stop and count to 10. I asked to have dinner with Linda alone. We sat in her living room, which I now understood was large and beautifully furnished, because she had always had the resources for large and beautifully furnished with sweet tea and peach cobbler, and I looked at her and said, "Linda, I need to ask you something directly." She said, "All right." I said, "Did you think I might be using your son?" She didn't answer immediately. That was an answer. She said carefully, "Caleb has been hurt before." I said, "I know, but I'm not her." "No," she said. "I see that now." "Then I need you to say that out loud, because I've spent the past 2 weeks sitting with the fact that everyone at my own wedding understood my financial situation better than I did. And that only happened because your family decided, before ever seeing how I'd actually handle this, that I needed to be managed." Linda looked down at her sweet tea. Then she said, "His grandfather evaluated me too. Before I married his father, he had people check my background. He told my husband I'd leave the minute something better came along." I said quietly, "I know." She looked up. "And instead of making sure nobody in your family ever had to feel that way again, you made it a tradition." First time I ever saw Linda Parker not have an answer ready. Here's what I want to be honest about. Because what I felt in the weeks after all this wasn't just anger. Anger would have been simple. It was this awful loop I kept getting stuck in. What was real? Did he fall in love with me? Or did he fall in love with the fact that I didn't know? Was he ever going to tell me the truth? Or was this always going to be a permanent arrangement where I lived inside a story he'd quietly written for me? And underneath that, the part I hate admitting, was this voice that said, "If you'd known from the beginning, would you have acted differently?" I don't think I would have. But not knowing for sure felt terrible. I packed a bag and went to stay with my friend Keela for 2 weeks. Caleb didn't push. He called every day. He didn't offer to fix it with money. He just said, "Take the time you need. I'm not going anywhere." On day 5, Keela, who is the most no-nonsense person I know, sat across from me with her coffee and said, "Girl, at some point you have to decide what you're actually mad about. Because he kept a secret from me and he has money and I didn't know are 2 different problems that need 2 different responses." She was right. I was furious because he'd made a decision about what I was allowed to know without consulting me, without trusting me. He'd run a quiet little experiment, and my life was the test environment. I had every right to be mad about that, but I also slowly, reluctantly understood how someone who'd been hurt the way he had could make that choice without realizing how it would land on the other person. That's not the same as forgiving it, but it was a door I could see. Caleb started therapy. Real therapy, not the kind some men do where they go twice, declare themselves healed, and never mention it again. I came home after 2 weeks, not because everything was fixed, because I don't run from hard things. We started couples counseling with a therapist named Dr. Reyes, who had this particular gift for asking the most uncomfortably accurate follow-up question at the exact moment you thought you were finished talking. In our 4th session, Caleb said, "I was trying to protect Ashley from all the noise that comes with this kind of money." Dr. Reyes waited 2 full seconds and said, "Or?" Caleb sat with that for a long time. Then he said, "Or I was protecting myself, and I made that her problem to carry." Yeah. He talked to his mother. He told Derek to stop watching me like I was a risk assessment. He set a boundary with his family, apparently the first real boundary he'd ever drawn with them, and it cost him something, and he did it anyway. He didn't call me afterward expecting to be thanked for it. That part mattered more than he knew. We took our time getting back to okay. We built a financial arrangement that actually made sense. What's his stays his. What's ours is clear. What I earn is mine. No allowances, no tests, no surprises. Real partnership, boring on paper, genuinely freeing in practice. Caleb's old F-150 eventually died. The transmission gave out on a Tuesday, and he came home looking like he'd lost something important. I tried very hard to be sympathetic. I said, "You know you're allowed to buy another truck, right?" He said, "That's not the point." And I started laughing. Because that sentence. He looked at me confused. And I said, "Oh, now you know that sentence." He understood immediately. That was one time. I offered to replace your Kia during a crisis. It needed brakes, Caleb. He bought a sensible SUV and complained about it for 6 months. About a year after all of this, we were sitting on the back porch on a Sunday afternoon. Nothing special, just coffee, quiet, normal. And I looked over at him and thought, I know who you are now. Not the money, not the land, not the carefully constructed simple life he'd built around himself as armor. You, the actual you. The man who drives the used SUV and still remembers I hate cilantro and shows up when things are hard and finally learned that protecting someone doesn't mean keeping them in the dark. I went back to that bank branch a few months later. The same teller was there. She recognized me. She asked quietly, like she'd been wondering if everything had worked out. I said, "Getting there." She nodded like she'd heard that answer before and knew exactly what it meant. Turns out, getting there is what most good marriages actually look like when you're being honest about it. At 32, I had already figured out that I didn't need a man to rescue me. What I hadn't figured out yet was how to make sure the man I chose actually trusted me. The money was just the thing that forced us to learn the difference. And I said yes to him before I knew what he had. Years later, after I knew exactly what he had, I had to decide whether to say yes again. The second yes was the one that mattered. If this story stayed with you, drop a comment. I'd genuinely love to know what you would have done in my place. And if you want to hear another story like this one, you already know what to do.